For people unfamiliar with you, if you would please just tell us your name and a little bit about your background and really what you've been doing for the last 20 years or so.
My name is Ocean Robbins, and I am co-founder and CEO of Food Revolution Network. And my mission is healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for all. I want to see a world where every kid is taken off the fast track to diabetes and obesity. I want to see a world where our elders can age and step into their wisdom years with peace and ease and joy and a clear mind. I want to see a world where all of us, regardless of the color of our skin or how much money we have in the bank, has healthy food for our families.
Your book, 31-Day Food Revolution, Heal Your Body, Feel Great, and Transform Your World, what is that all about?
I wrote 31-Day Food Revolution because I'm sick and tired of so many people being sick and tired. I think that we're fed up with the toxic food system and we're hungry for a change, and I want to give the power to create that change into your hands where it belongs. For so many people, the biggest challenge isn't even knowing what to do, it's doing what we know. If all that was needed was to say, hey, we need to eat more fruits and vegetables and less processed junk, we wouldn't have an obesity epidemic in America right now. But unfortunately, just knowledge isn't enough. We also need action, because at the end of the day, cancer doesn't care a heck of a lot how many videos you watch, how many books you read, how many podcasts you listen to. It does care what you eat and how you live. And if you want to fight cancer and heart disease and type 2 diabetes and Alzheimer's, the prescription fundamentally is the same, and it's not some newfangled drug. It's good, wholesome, healthy food. So I wrote 31-Day Food Revolution with 31 chapters, each of which ends with simple action steps you can take to put into action what you're learning and get results in your life.
Where does all the animal waste go, and what impact does that have on dead zones and waterways and the environment?
It takes about 12 pounds of grain to produce 1 pound of feedlot beef in modern factory farms. For chicken or pork or eggs, it's a little bit less inefficient, but we still essentially have a protein factory in reverse. We're taking soy and corn and irrigated pasture land, and we're turning it into livestock flesh, and we're wasting most of the resources in the process. And we're turning them into hoof and hide and bones and energy the animals use, and most of all, manure. And all that manure has to go somewhere. Now, in the old days, an animal would poop on the ground, and their manure would turn into fertilizer for the next generation of plants. But nowadays, when you concentrate a huge amount of animals in a very small space, that manure actually becomes a problem. It concentrates into these huge lagoons that become a source of immense pollution to the community. It's causing asthma. It's one of the primary drivers of asthma in America right now is people living in communities near these factory farms that are actually breathing polluted air that's causing lung problems. It's also contaminating the water. Nitrates are seeping down into the drinking water and causing all kinds of health problems for humanity. Now, some of that manure is still being composted and recycled, but along the way it stores up in these huge quantities and causes massive problems. So, if you care about the future of clean water, if you care about wanting food for future generations and you don't want to see us wasting all these calories going into livestock, if you care about our climate because you want to see forests instead of cropland, then you know what? Eat less meat.
What impact does eating animal products have on climate change, and how does eating a hamburger affect climate change?
The UN Food and Agriculture Organization looked at the impact of many different factors, but particularly they looked at agriculture and its impact on climate. They ended up determining that cows impact our climate even more than cars do. It's pretty tremendous. And the reason is cows have a lot of factors. It's not because they stay up all night with the lights on or because they forget to turn the heat down when they leave the room. It's because livestock is very intensive on agricultural resources. It takes 12 pounds of grain to produce 1 pound of feedlot beef in the modern factory farming system. When cows are grazing, often they're grazing on land that used to be forest. It takes a lot of land to sustainably graze cattle, and all that land has to come from somewhere. So when you look at all the factors, and also the fact that meat has to be refrigerated and that it's highly perishable, and you look at all of the resources that go into meat production, you end up determining that if you want to eat a more plant-based diet, that may be the most powerful single step you can take as an individual consumer to help slow or stop climate change. As a matter of fact, if there was a study done that found that a Prius driver who ate a standard American diet would have a bigger carbon footprint than a Hummer driver who was vegan. So whether you go vegan or not, there's a lot of room to eat less meat and make a big difference for the planet.
What's wrong with fish farms?
We've heard a lot about the environmental and health problems that come from factory farms, where we coop animals together in terribly unnatural conditions and pump them full of antibiotics just to keep them alive and feed them a totally unnatural diet and get a terrible feed conversion ratio. Well, guess what? All of that is happening with fish right now. It takes about 5 pounds of fish from the oceans to produce 1 pound of farm fish. The other 4 are essentially wasted or turned into pollution. Fish farms are massively polluted. The fish fecal material there's basically swimming in it. There's nowhere for it to go because they're so contaminated and concentrated. They are given antibiotics to keep them alive under these conditions. Salmon farms are actually giving the salmon dye, food coloring, that is in the water they're swimming in, so that their flesh will be pink, because otherwise they're fed a very unnatural diet and their flesh would be gray. Well, people don't want gray salmon because they want it to be salmon colored. So the industry gives them dyes to make that happen. It's a violation of nature and the way these creatures were actually, I think, meant to live. Now, that said, there are some fish farms that are trying to do the right thing and trying to figure out how to raise food sustainably in the oceans. And I think that's worth pursuing. But we have to keep our eyes open and be sober to the fact that most modern fish is coming from farms where the fish were treated terribly and they're environmental disasters.
How does eating fish affect climate change and cause natural resource shortages?
Because it takes about 5 pounds of fish meal to make 1 pound of farmed fish, fish farming is not an answer to the demolition of the oceans that we see taking place today as we're strip mining them for wild fish. It's actually probably making the problem worse. Fish farms are also resource intensive and wasteful and polluting, and this is bad for our climate, and it also creates an inferior product because farmed fish, whatever nutritional benefits we see in fish, are worse and the pollution is higher. Fish farms create fish that are much higher in PCBs and heavy metals and mercury and other toxins that we're already getting too much of.
Why should people care about the way animals raised to be food are treated?
There's something profound and even magical about the human-animal bond. Anyone who's ever had a dog or a cat that they fell in love with knows what I'm talking about. It somehow deepens our own sense of humanity to communicate and connect across the species line and to feel the unconditional love that animals are capable of. We have, I think, some kind of responsibility towards the animals in our lives to be stewards, to care for them, to look out for them. And tragically, I think that the factory farming system is a total violation of that bond. I don't know anybody who wants to see animals treated cruelly. In fact, 94% of the American public says that animals who are raised for food, if animals are going to be raised for food at all, should be treated humanely and free from cruelty. And yet, the modern factory farming system has institutionalized levels of cruelty that literally, if you or I did them to a dog or a cat, we would go to jail. But it's normalized, and the laws are such. In every state, we've got laws against cruelty to animals, but in every state, they specifically exempt animals raised for food so long as the practice is normal. So now we've got a system where normal is incredibly, and I would say unconscionably, cruel. We've got chickens being housed in warehouses so small they cannot lift a single wing. They are so packed together with 5, 10, 15, 20,000 birds under one roof, sitting in their own feces and the feces of generations of chickens before them, bred to be morbidly obese so that they cannot even stand. They lie in poop, their feathers fall off, 5% of them die before they even reach slaughter, and this is normal. And I don't know anyone who thinks it's okay. So personally, I don't want to eat the products of a system like that, which are very contaminated, by the way. There's a reason why 80% of the chicken meat in our supermarkets is contaminated with E. coli, pathogenic bacteria, because the birds sat in poop their whole lives. This is not the way that nature designed it to be, and I don't think it's what we as humans want for our impact on other species. So, I think people who eat meat, even people who eat meat, maybe especially people who eat meat, want animals to be free from this kind of cruelty. We all have a stake in saying enough is enough. Animals deserve to be treated with respect. They deserve to live good lives, whether or not you choose to eat animal flesh. There's a lot of factors that go into that decision. I think a lot of us could agree we should not be treating animals this way.